How are you doing, everyone? It's great to see so many people here. We're absolutely packed out today, so it's amazing to see so many people here. My name's Stuart Dorman, I'm from Sabio, and I'm going to be your host for what I think is going to be a really fun and engaging day. Now, it's been 6 years since we first hosted our Disrupt conference. The first one was back in 2017. And the idea behind Disrupt was to look at how disruptive technologies and innovation were changing the world, and in particular looking at it at the intersection of where customers meet enterprises and how we could apply disruptive technology to create customer and employee experiences. And back then, it was a hugely optimistic time. Technology really felt like it was changing the world. We were 10 years after the launch of the iPhone, so that was launched back in 2007, and smartphones had become the fastest selling consumer product of all time, the fastest selling consumer product category. And 10 years after their launch, 85% of the UK population were using smartphones, and that was forming a platform for digital transformation as we know it today. AI was also capturing the imagination of the public. For the first time ever, we were sort of getting more comfortable with engaging with computers and talking to them. We were starting to hear about self-driving cars and how they would transform society. And social media was at the peak of its powers as well, and that was reimagining ways in which we would all communicate with each other and engage with organizations in different ways. So this optimism around technology meant that every single product, every service, every business model was being disrupted, and unless you disrupted yourself, someone else would come along and do it. Now, it remains the case today that technology is moving forward at an incredibly rapid pace. But when we think about disruption today, we tend to think less about technological disruption and more about geopolitical disruption. It's got a bit of a darker feel to it. I think some would argue that it may have been as a result of some of the power that we were giving the social media companies by, inadvertently sharing data with them. Every click and like and swipe that we gave the social media companies provided them data about us that meant that they often knew us better than we knew ourselves. And a lot of the information they were gathering meant that we could be manipulated in ways that maybe weren't beneficial to society, leading to the rise of things like populism, Brexit, Trump, these kinds of things. And we're still kind of dealing with the output of that today. But we can't blame everything on social media. If we look at some of the more recent disruptions that we tend to think about, obviously COVID and the pandemic had a big factor in all of our lives. Thinking about climate change, suddenly feeling very real all of a sudden. And of course, the awful, horrendous situation with the war in Ukraine at the moment, and the subsequent energy crisis, and then the economic crisis and political crisis that have come off the back of that. It kind of, when we were pulling together the theme for Disrupt this year, we kept coming back to this Chinese curse, "May you live in interesting times," as the theme for the event. And, it certainly feels like we live in interesting times at the moment, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And there's a word that describes this impending sense of doom that we all feel when we put the news on these days. And it was the word of the year, Collins Dictionary word of the year last year. It was the permacrisis. And the permacrisis describes this extended period of instability and insecurity, I think, that we all feel at the moment. And Colin said, and I quote, when they chose this word, that it sums up quite succinctly how truly awful 2022 had been for so many people. So the result of that, obviously, economically, is that inflation has hit a 40-year high. Now, most of us have never really experienced inflation in our adult lifetimes. But it peaked just before Christmas at over 10%. And, we can all feel it. We can all feel it in our pockets. We're all feeling the impact of inflation and the fact that we've got less money. The Resolution Foundation forecast that the UK population would experience a 4% drop in disposable incomes over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. So what that means is that customers are going to be looking more for value. They're going to be much more price sensitive. KPMG said that almost 2/3 of the population are going to be cutting back on their spending over the next 12 months, focusing on things like the basics, food, energy, that type of thing, which means they're going to have less money to spend on discretionary purchases. So all of us, every single one of us here in this room, are going to have to fight harder to win the hearts and minds of our customers in these tough economic times. So we know that customer experience is going to be a key battleground through which a lot of that plays out. And we've all seen the research. We all know what the statistics say about customer experience leaders winning and outperforming other organizations. But nobody sets out to deliver a poor experience. Every single one of you, I'm sure, here today is focused on trying to drive a better experience for your customers. The question is, how much do you prioritize it? Who owns it within your organization? And crucially, how do you maintain it when no doubt budgets are going to be constrained and cut back over the course of the next 12 months and beyond? So a good place to start is to think about friction and effort. And this was a really interesting bit of research that came out actually about the time of the last recession, just after 2008, 2009. And it was conducted by the Harvard Business Review. And the title of the report, many of you will have read this before, the title of the report was "Stop Trying to Delight Your Customers." And what their research showed was that you're wasting time and money and effort if you're going over the top and delighting your customers. What you really need to do, what really drives customer loyalty, is to focus on making it easy, simplification, trying to reduce the effort the customer has to expend when they're engaging with your organization. And the research shows that if you do that, it's a much better predictor of customer loyalty. So all of us need to be really focused on trying to understand those friction points that exist across the customer journey. So I think, when was the last time you did this? Walk that complete end-to-end journey for your own organizations, for your own customers. Did you make sure that the handoffs between each of these touch points are as seamless as they possibly can be, and making sure that the information that we capture about the customer as they go on their journey stays with them, so that we can use it to drive personalization and, of course, reduce effort? So a lot of people have been turning to the cloud as a way of helping with this problem. And for many years, the cloud has just been seen as this destination that every organization goes on, a place that if you go to, it magically transforms your business once you've arrived. But clearly, the cloud isn't going to solve everything. There are many pitfalls to moving to the cloud. First of all, cost. Cost actually has been one of the biggest failings of the cloud. You need to be very careful about costs. A lot of the anticipated cost savings that organizations were expecting when they moved to the cloud didn't really materialize, and in fact, in some cases have gone up. Particularly if you're an organization with previous investments in IT, which clearly, unless you're a startup, that probably covers most organizations. It also intensified the skills crisis that we are all experiencing at the moment. The cloud is not just a set of technologies, it's about culture, it's a mindset thing, it's about how you structure your organization to be more agile and take advantage of this. And we've got some great case studies later on in the day that we're going to talk about that talk to some of those issues. But what everybody's aiming to do with cloud, with customer experience, is drive digital transformation. And the way that we should be able to measure digital transformation is something that has a tangible impact on the customer and or the employee, and therefore should have a really clearly defined return on investment that we can measure. But what ends up happening is that a lot of cloud projects get bogged down in just becoming infrastructure modernization projects. You're just swapping out old technology for new without necessarily taking advantage of what that technology can do. What everyone's striving for is to drive innovation, and we define innovation as something that allows you to create novel and interesting experiences that differentiate from the competition. And we can use these experiments to generate data, to figure out what the return on investment looks like, to then drive digital transformation. But perhaps over the next year or so, a lot of focus is going to be on sweating our assets, trying to extract more value from our existing technologies, as opposed to kind of running a whole load of new initiatives. So I think that's going to be a big focus for lots of organizations over the coming year. And obviously, the big push for digital transformation is assuming that digital is better. Digital is a better way of doing things, and in many cases that's true. But We don't solve all of our problems once we've digitized everything. And in fact, digital is such an overused word these days. It's almost become a bit meaningless. It means different things to different people. So what do we mean by digital? Well, for some people, when they talk about digital, they mean digital channels. And by digital channels, what they mean is not voice. Anything that isn't voice is digital. And I think we need to challenge that a little bit, because voice should be seen as a digital channel. We can digitize it, we can automate it, we can use conversational AI to create a completely digital experience. When a customer speaks to us, we can capture data and we can analyze that data once we've digitized the voice. Voice has its own special properties as well. It allows us to build relationships with customers. It allows us to be very personal. And often it's a quicker way of getting things solved. Email is the original digital channel, but often is the least friendly for customers. It's the least productive channel. So again, it has its benefits, it has its value, but it doesn't always deliver the best customer experience. Messaging, web chat, these channels as well, again, they are very productive in certain situations, other situations not. They put a barrier in the way in some cases of us building relationships with customers. But the point behind this is that each of these channels has its own properties. Each channel has its strengths and weaknesses. So when we're trying to design experiences for customers, we need to think about the properties of each of these channels and try and guide the customer to the right channel to solve their problem. Customers don't want the channel of choice. They don't want to be bombarded with options. They just want to solve their problem, and we need to design the experience around that. Sitting behind these channels, we have different user interfaces, and the same principles apply here. Each of these different user interfaces has its own properties that we need to take advantage of. And your customers will more than likely touch at least one, maybe two, maybe even all of these user interfaces when they engage with your organization. So we need to make sure that the handoff between these user interfaces is as seamless as possible. And we need to make sure that we're applying design thinking to every single one of these. I think we're pretty good at doing that now on graphical and touchscreen, probably less so on conversational user interfaces, relatively new in the grand scheme of things. And we need to really think about how we design experiences using the best of those channels. So again, to quote Steve Jobs, starting with the customer experience and working backwards to the technology, not just bombarding the customer with options and channels and choice. Think about what they're trying to do and then use the right channel to solve the problem. So one of the byproducts of things moving towards more digital is data. And we're constantly told that data is the most valuable commodity that we have as organizations. It's the new oil. If we use it wisely, we can outsmart the competition and deliver competitive advantage. We're also told that the amount of data that we're creating is growing exponentially year on year. So these are zettabytes of data, whatever a zettabyte is. I've got no idea, but I know it's a lot. And I know that we're creating lots of it at the moment. Every time we take a photograph, every time we take a high-resolution video, we're creating more data. But the amount of data that's being made available to organizations from their customers hasn't really materially grown over the last decade or so. It certainly hasn't followed the amount of data that we're all creating here. But what has changed is our ability to organize and to get value from that data. And one of the first things that organizations are looking to do to bring this data together, to take all of these different silos of data that we've been creating over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and organize them through customer data platforms. Now, these were historically used by marketing, but we're increasingly seeing customer data platforms creating that 360-degree view of the customer, and particularly entering into the world of customer experience. So this is a big focus for a lot of organizations at the moment. So why is that important? With two key reasons. First of all, I would argue that it is impossible to create a seamless, frictionless customer journey when our data is dispersed all over the place. We need to make sure that our data is joined up if we're going to deliver a seamless customer journey. So disconnected data means the journey will be disconnected. The second thing, and I think this will become more profound over the course of the next few years, is that we need to think about data as the fuel for AI. So we talk about it being the new oil, we talk about it being a valuable commodity. We need to think about it as the fuel for artificial intelligence. And we need to think about the coming wave of AI and how we can organize our data to prepare for that. So AI, it's gradually infiltrating its way into all kinds of different products and services. It's going to touch every single customer interaction in multiple different ways, over the coming months and years. We're seeing AI appear everywhere now. It's becoming ubiquitous. The price point for AI is decreasing all the time as it increases in its utility. And we need to prepare for a time where the price performance will be such that it just becomes, like any other digital technology, embedded into pretty much every service that we deliver. And just to give you a quick example of where we are today with artificial intelligence, for the last few years, machine learning and AI has been, we can almost think of them as pattern recognition machines. They're brilliant at picking out patterns in complex data sets. So in this example here, this is my iPhone, and what I'm going to do is go through and do a quick search in my Photos application, in this case for burger. And what you'll see that the technology can do is to pick out images within the photographs of burgers, patterns. It knows what the pattern of a burger looks like, and it can pick up on that. It's my daughter holding up a big, juicy burger. And what it's also able to do is to pick up on the text that's contained within the images of those photographs. In this case, this was a restaurant took down the street in America somewhere. This is a menu taken from a concert somewhere. And here's this is my local pub, and you can see the word burger written in handwriting on a chalk notice board, and it's been able to identify that as well. Now, I want to pause for a second there, because in itself, this is an incredible development. Okay, this was impossible even just a few years ago, but now machine learning has been able to recognize these patterns and allow me to search through 20 odd years worth of photographs and pick out on information in those photographs. And think about how that applies to your business and the many, many years of recordings and data and bits of information that you've been capturing about your customers that are in these silos all over the place. AI, and in particular machine learning, recognizing these patterns allows us to unlock this data. But despite these advances, there's been a whole wave of excitement, particularly over the last few months, about a new type of AI. Last year was actually seen as a landmark year for artificial intelligence. A lot of people referred to it as the year that AI had its iPhone moment. And again, just to be clear on that, what they mean is that this is probably one of the most significant technological developments that we've seen over the last 15 years. So people talk about a new era of AI. And really what this new type of AI, this generative AI is doing, in very simplistic terms, is taking the concepts that we talked about earlier on about pattern recognition and almost flipping that on its head. So instead of me asking it to recognize an image, a pattern of a burger, it's able to generate a pattern of a burger, or generate text, generate images. And we're seeing this used in some really exciting ways. Now, to talk about this in a bit more detail, I've asked a very special guest to come up on the stage. He's someone I've known for many years. He's an AI expert from Microsoft. And I've known Seb for quite a long time, and I couldn't quite think of a way of introducing him. So I thought I'd turn to ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT to write me an introduction to Seb Reeve from Microsoft at a conference discussing AI and ChatGPT. But I thought I'd add a little twist to it. And I thought I'd ask it to do it in the style of a rap, which I'm now going to attempt to perform to welcome Seb on the stage. So, okay, let me just get this up on my phone. Okay, can we have a beat, please? Okay. Are you ready for this? Okay. Let everybody know about the man Seb Reeve. He's an AI expert, you better believe. He's heavily involved in GPT, that's a fact. If you want to know the latest, you better sit back. For more than a decade in this AI space, his GPT work is seen all over the place. He's the go-to man for any AI case, and his knowledge at this conference will leave you amazed. A leader of the field, a pioneer of the times. His insights provide you with the trends in AI. Rely on Seb to make the right decisions about GPT and its technology mission. So don't miss out on hearing Seb breathe at this conference on AI and GPT. His knowledge and experience are sure to please. You don't want to miss this opportunity, believe.